Today on our 2009 Cadillac DTS, we're going to be taking a look at and installing the Roadmaster Universal High Power Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-154. Here's what this diode wiring setup is going to look like once it's on the vehicle. As you can see, we've got our 4-pole connector here at the front, and the reason we've got this wiring on this vehicle is so that it can be towed on a tow dolly and you've got the lights on the vehicle working. But this vehicle cannot be towed as a flat tow setup, so that's why it's going to be on a dolly. But this system does a good job of making sure that the 4-pole power that's going to be provided to this connector here will be transferred to the rear lights of the vehicle, so that you will have the functions of tail lights, turn signals, and brake lights at the rear of the vehicle to make sure that the drivers on the road behind you can be properly alerted to what you are doing. The diodes that are included with this kit allow you to get 2 separate signals, but they don't have to cross. They end up meeting in the same spot at the tail light, but they don't cross, so that you don't have to tap and possibly risk messing with the vehicle's wiring. So it's going to help protect your vehicle. First thing we're going to need to do to begin our installation is remove this underbody panel here. So in order to do that, we're going to have some 8mm bolts that run across the front up here, and we'll need to take those out. And then there's a 7mm screw here at the base of the wheel well. Then there's one in the same location on the other side that we'll need to remove as well. Then also in both wheel wells, on either side of where that screw was that we just removed, there are 2 push pin fasteners. You can use a trim panel tool to remove the center of it if you have one, but if you don't, you can just use a flathead screwdriver and it should work just fine. So you get that center pulled out, and then the body of that pin should pop right out. Then there will be 5 13mm bolts that we'll need to take out up along the front here. Once we've got all of those removed, we can begin to work the shield out from the front. So now, after removing the panel, I routed the wire just up through the lower part of this front fascia so that it comes out underneath the license plate. So then what we're going to do is I'm going to take this 4-pole bracket. If you'd like to pick one up like this, it's part number HM48595. What I'm going to do is get the 4-pole lined up inside of it so that it'll close. And then I'm going to secure it to the underside of our license plate bracket here. I'm going to use a couple self-tapping screws to go up into the underside of our license plate bracket. Now it's nice and secure here. So I left it so that we can still put this dust cover back on. Now for running the wiring, ran it back and tied it in a few locations here in front of the lower radiator support to some existing wiring, and then ran back along that side, up along the lower part of that subframe, tying it in a few locations to make sure to keep it tight. And when I routed this, I made sure to stay away from anything that would move or get too hot to possibly damage the wire. And I continued routing it across here, and then ran it along the inside of the frame rail there, keeping it tucked up along the support brackets for the fuel lines, and continued following along until I could head up and head over the rear axle and cross member till I got towards the back, and I was sure to stay away from the exhaust as much as possible. And then from there we'll be able to head up to our tail light assemblies. So now in the trunk, we'll need to get ready to remove our tail lights and have access to our wiring. But in order to do that, we'll need to remove some of the flooring and the threshold. So we'll start by removing the spare tire cover there. So next, we'll need to take our threshold out. In order to do that, we'll need to start at each side. It's got a little push pin there, so you need to pop that out. Then there's one on the other side as well. And then once you've got both of those out, you'll be able to reach down low and begin gently pulling upwards in order to get it to pop loose. Because there's push pins that go down into these rectangular holes right there. So now we can come into the side here, and our side paneling, we've got these two little cargo hooks that screw on the studs that are right there. So we'll remove those. And then we'll be able to pull this side covering back. And then this large grommet that's right back here is where we're going to be pulling our 4-pole wiring through in order to bring it up to begin hooking it up to the tail lights here. Before we pull our wiring up through that grommet, we're going to remove the tail light. And both of them are moved the same, and they've got 3 10mm nuts holding them in from the inside here. Then once you've got those 3 nuts off, what you can do is come to the outside and just gently pull outwards on the light, and it should pull right out. And then we need to take this connector off the back, and in order to do that, you can take a flathead screwdriver, and these 2 little tabs up top, you can pry down on those in order to pry the connector out, because you can see there at the top it's got the little hook to clip in and hold it. So now what we'll do is we'll take this grommet and we'll just pull it out of there for now, so we've got room to pull our 4-pole wiring through there. So now with our 4-pole wiring pulled all the way through, what we can do with this grommet is take a pair of side cutters and cut a slice in it so that that'll give our wiring a spot to sit inside our grommet. So now next thing we'll need to do is take a test light and figure out which of our wires are going to be our power wires for our brake and turn signals, and also our running lights. So first we'll check for tail light power. Alright, so we've got power at that one right there, which is the purple wire where it comes out on the back side of that pin. Next, let's check turn signal. So there's our turn signal, and that one on the back is going to be the yellow wire. And this other wire has yellow and white, just so you don't confuse them, but this one's the just yellow wire. And then the last one we need to check for is our brake power. And as you can see, we're getting brake power on both the yellow wire and green wire there, that dark green. And that yellow wire is also our turn signal, so that's the one that we're going to need to use, because coming from the motorhome, that's going to be the one that gets power for both the brake and turn signal through the yellow wire and the 4-pole. So now what we'll do is peel this tape back in order to have a good amount of room to work with these wires. So now what we'll do is we'll get ready to install our diodes. And what we'll need to do first is cut our 4-pole wiring to length. And we're going to cut 3 of the 4 wires. We're not going to cut the green one because that one's just going to run directly to the passenger side. So I'll get that green wire separate from the rest of them. So now what we can do is take our 3 wires and make sure that they're separated. You just need to peel them apart. And then once you've got that, you can strip the ends of all 3 of them back so that you've got the wire exposed. With the yellow wire, we're going to take one of these blue connectors off the end of the diode and install it You want to make sure with your crimps that they're nice and solid and not going to come apart. And then with this white one, we'll take the ring terminal that comes in the kit and install it onto that white wire. Now for that brown wire that we had, we'll need to take the excess brown wire that we cut off from the 4-pole and get it separated so that we can strip the end back. So then what we'll need to do is, once we've got that stripped back, is this excess brown wire is going to go over to the passenger side in order to make sure that the tail lights over there have power as well. So we'll take those two ends and we'll twist them together. And then on the one diode that has a yellow spade connector on it, we'll take that off and install the twisted end into that in order to crimp that down. So now that we've got all of these set up, we can go over to our wiring from the vehicle and begin splicing into it. So we'll take the yellow wire, which is going to be our turn and brake signal. We'll clip that and we'll strip the ends back. Then with either end of it, we'll take two more of these blue connectors, slide them on there, and crimp them down. And then what I can do is take the yellow wire, which is the brake and turn signal wire that'll be coming from the RV, and on the diode we've got the side with two prongs that says in, and the side with one that says out. That out's going to be going towards the connector for our tail light, and so the in is going to be getting the signal coming from the car, and then also the signal coming from the motorhome. So you want to put those on there. Then the other end we'll put on that outside so that we can make sure that both of those signals go through to the out and make it out to this connector. So then we'll do the same thing for our purple wire, which is our tail light wire. And we can do the same thing with this one, coming from the vehicle. And the brown wire is that tail light wire coming from the motorhome. Then on the other side, we'll put the purple wire going out to that connector. So now we can take the ring terminal on the white wire and use the self-tapping screw in order to ground it. Now wherever you ground it to, you want to make sure that there's nothing back there that it could possibly damage, like wiring or anything like that. On the back side of these diodes, it's got some double-sided sticky tape, so what I'm going to do is use a little bit of rubbing alcohol in order to clean a good area to mount them. I'll peel that tape back and stick it over here so it stays nice and secure and won't rattle around going down the road. And then we'll be ready to reinstall our tail light. And then we'll just want to make sure all these wires are tied safely out of the way. So now what I'll do is I'll route the brown and green wires over to the passenger side before I finish putting this paneling back in. So I used a fish wire to route that green and brown wire here just through the inside of this rear line of the trunk, and then out the other side so it'll have easy access to the wiring over there. And then we'll be ready to reinstall our interior panel. So now on the passenger side, we'll need to use a test light the same way we did before to find the tail light, brake light, and turn light circuits. There's our running lights. So our running lights are the brown wire. Turn signal is that darker green wire. Our brake signal is that same dark green wire as the turn signal. So now we can cut our 2 wires to length, and then we'll strip the ends of those back. So then on the end of each of these, you can take one of these blue terminals off of our diodes. So then I can come over here to the wires that we need. We need this brown one and the dark green one here. So I'll clip each of them, strip them back, and install my blue connectors. Now I can begin installing my diodes. So now I'll clean a location in order to mount the diodes up on this side. So now with those in place, I can get the rest of this wiring tucked down out of the way, and then I can begin reinstalling my light and paneling. So now we can reinstall our threshold. Now that we've got everything installed, we can plug in our RV and make sure that everything's working. So first we'll check our tail lights, followed by our right brake and right turn signal. Now I'll check left brake and left turn signal. Looks like everything's working properly. That's going to complete our look at and installation of the Roadmaster Universal High Power Diode Wiring Kit, part number RM-154, on our 2009 Cadillac DTS.
Click the link below to shop, learn more, or visit us at eTrailer.com.